Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from BoardGameCo, and this is a State of the Channel video. It's December 9th, 2023, which makes it 4 years to the date since I first pulled out my phone in this basement, just holding it while wandering around, making everyone dizzy, saying hello world, and talking about the fact that I was starting a YouTube channel. There's a whole evolution of how we got from there to here, and whether you've been with me for the past 2 videos, or whether you've been with me since the very beginning, thank you very much for watching the channel. Thank you very much for participating, for engaging, for being around, and for the practical reality that I'm only able to be here doing everything I want, doing everything I love, because of you here watching, because of you here engaging, viewing, supporting, all of those things. Like I said already, this is a State of the Channel video. I've done videos like this in the past, kind of. I've done like a year anniversary. I've done occasional updates and things. I'd like to make this a yearly tradition. A State of the Channel. How are things? Where are they? Both for those who are hopping onto the channel for the first time and don't know who I am, or for those who have been around for a bit and just giving a kind of a recap of how I operate, what I do, what things you can expect on this channel. There'll be a bunch of things throughout this video. I will, of course, have timestamps to everything down below. But let's start off with the fun ones, the financial bits, the channel health, all of those things. Let's go ahead and get into those things. And if you're new here, I've always been fairly transparent about what I make, how I make it, where my money comes from, what my expenses are like. I don't have to do that necessarily. Not necessarily. I don't have to do that. But frankly, I am able to do what I do because of your support. And so giving you that full transparency is something that I choose to do. Don't expect it from every channel, and you shouldn't expect it. It's a personal choice I'm able to make, and those who don't, and that's totally fine. But let's go and start it off with Patreon. There's a bunch of ways that I kind of grade the channel health. How are things going? And some of those numbers are up, some of them are about even, some of them are trending downwards. There are always different numbers all over the place for different reasons. Patreon currently is at 385 active members, bringing in around $1,800 a month. This is down from the highest it's ever been, but that's to be expected to a degree. The highest it ever went is when I went full-time in the YouTube space, content creation, in, what was it at this point? Oh my gosh, it was April of 2022, so a year and a half ago, I want to say. I went full-time in content creation, put out a video, and I got the highest amount of Patreon support, and it's been trending downwards over time since then, which frankly makes sense. Generally, things like that are going to see a surge in a moment of need, in a moment of, oh my gosh, I really need this extra level. And that extra level was absolutely incredible at a time when I was worried whether I could pay the bills or not. Money, we'll get into my overall financial situation a little bit later, but Patreon overall, 385 members, $1,800 a month, and it's absolutely incredible, and it helps me make decisions on the channel that wouldn't make sense otherwise. Effectively, practically speaking, when I put out a video, let's say I put out a video of a game to review that I know will get, 1,500 views, that video might bring in $6. $6 to get the game, learn the game, play the game, film the game, all those things, and I get paid $6 for it. Doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to do something like that. There are so many videos I would not be able to do if this channel wasn't supported by you, if there wasn't an incentive, an overarching structure of you sitting here and saying, I value this content enough to pay into Patreon and to help the channel out. The math I usually put is, and it's around 1,800, not 2,000, but I'm going to round it up to 2,000 for the sake of easy math here, but I put out roughly 50, 60 videos a month. If I'm getting around $2,000 a month from Patreon, that means on average I can mentally check that every video is worth at least $40. I can say, hey, by the way, this video is definitely totally not worth doing on its own, but if I factor in that Patreon enables to make choices that are good for the overall state of the channel and the information I provide, rather than looking at every single video as whether this video makes sense and that video makes sense and that video makes sense, when I'm able to look at it in that wholesome approach, Patreon is effectively what enables me to make choices that wouldn't otherwise make sense for my time, effort, money, all those things otherwise. So if you are a Patreon member, please know you are absolutely having a difference. You are helping me to not just chase the views, the clicks, to not adjust my content around what has the best possible, ability to hook you in, the best titles, the best topics, the best everything that's all about that traction and attention. Rather, you are enabling me to approach this channel from the stance of actually trying to treat the hobby seriously, which I'm tremendously grateful for. So thank you for that. So again, Patreon trending downwards to an extent, but also hard to really tell because I always get new members in, new members leave. If you are interested in becoming a member, well, we'll talk about some things about that in a second. We'll talk about general ways to support the channel. YouTube in general, A little bit more static. This is where currently we're seeing around 6 million views a year right now. That number is around par from what it was the prior year. Over the first few years of the channel, I saw a lot of rapid growth, which I'm very grateful for, but there's a degree of plateau. Every time someone pops onto the channel for a new video, there's someone else who kind of has seen enough videos, and as much as they might like me, like my content, they watch a little bit less. This is normal for me, it's normal for most people. You find something you love and you're heavily participant, and some channels you find that you love, you watch every single video. I've been watching Philip DeFranco non-stop for the past 10 years, and I don't think I've missed more than a handful of his videos. I just enjoy his content. If there's someone like Rhett and Link, who do Rhett and Link in the morning, or whatever it is, I don't know, I watch the videos of theirs maybe once a week instead, maybe once every 2 weeks. I tune in here and there. Everyone's going to have different ways they resonate with different types of content, and so it's natural that the rapid growth initially is seeing more of a tapering off. People pop in, people pop out, it all works out, but around 6 million views a year, around 700,000 watch hours, which is an insane number. 700,000 watch hours a year. Again, that's a roughly par number. Subscriber growth is up 9,200 subs. We're currently at 54,000 subscribers. That's up 9,200 over the past year. That number is a bit down, meaning the subscribers always go up. On almost any channel, subscribers tend to trend upwards past any form of, controversy or drama or whatever it is. Subscribers tend to move upwards. And so in my case, when I say it's down, what I mean is that the year prior, I believe it was closer to maybe 16,000 subs that I gained. Last year, that growth is a little slower. Again, this is normal. You'll see channels that, the larger board game channels tend to grow a little bit less year over year, with obvious exceptions such as Shut Up and Sit Down, the Dice Tower, some of the most popular channels in the space. But once you hit a certain plateau, those channels in the 50 to 100K range, generally you see a drop off as you've, to a certain extent, tapped a lot of people in the market, and you're still finding where you're growing and where you're finding your audience effectively. All things are good. None of these numbers are scary. These are good numbers that they don't necessarily support the ongoing large taking over the world growth of the channel, but they support that I can keep doing what I'm doing and not panic for fear of things going south. Revenue on YouTube over this past year was $34,000. So if you look again at $1,800 a month plus that $34,000, I should have done the math beforehand. What's $1,800 a month times 12 is $18,000 plus $3,600, so that's $21,600 plus 35. This rounds 56K being made from Patreon and YouTube combined, which checks out. That's going to be the main form of monetary impact that I personally gained from this channel. If you watched one of my videos a while ago, I don't remember, this is what we'll get into, I guess, personal finances and stuff, but I talked about personal finances a long time ago in a different video, fully going over all the things that lead into the channel being able to pay for what my bills and expenses are, and where my money comes in, goes out, all of that. So YouTube is bringing in around 55K a year, what is it, 36, around, I think the number was around 55, that's what I just said, right? 56,000 a year. The additional monetary income that YouTube does get is towards paid content, which we'll talk about in a second, but most of that goes directly to the people on the channel who are doing the paid content. So we'll talk about that shortly. And then for me, my additional form of income comes from GameFound. I have a job at GameFound. I'm CMO of GameFound. We will talk about this more throughout the video because I'll be talking about everything here from my biases, my conflicts, my average ratings, all these various things. I'll be getting into all of it over the general state of the channel video. But effectively, GameFound does allow me to go. My expenses of a year are in the range of $90,000 to $100,000 a year, and GameFound takes me from a point where I just wouldn't otherwise be able to make the bills work to a point where I am able to, well, handle things. My personal financial situation is fine. It could be better. It could certainly be worse. I'm grateful for the fact that I'm able to be in a space I love without panicking about, well, paying the bills. And so I am very well off in that sense, very fortunate in that sense. Sharing money, sharing income and expenses, all those things is always a tricky situation. I do it because I generally believe in transparency. It can bite you, it can certainly have a negative impact on you, but I believe in transparency. I believe it helps others, both people who run channels or people who are supporting, watching channels. I think it's helpful to just have that kind of just sheer publicness to a degree. There's always lines in the sand where it isn't. If I was making significantly more money, I would be a little bit more reluctant to share it. But as it stands right now, things are fine, things are good. Your support is very much appreciated and does help support the channel. Speaking of which, how can you support the channel? How can you help out? Well, first of all, in the coming weeks, I'll probably be doing a dedicated video on that subject. I just spent around $3,500 on a variety of film equipment to set up a second studio, to get some additional things. I do also have to replace my computer at some point. It's not fully able to keep up with 3 camera angles. We'll talk about that stuff. But effectively, over the money I've already paid out over the past several months to get new stuff, as well as the money that I might have to spend, I'm looking in the range of around 5-6K of expenses, so I will be likely running a dedicated video to whatever degree people can help out. If they can, they can. If they can't, they can't. For me, it's always a balance of trying to just make sure I provide the best content possible, the best equipment, the best situation, all those things, while ultimately I'm still going to try to do those things regardless. If I can run a support drive and have those things compensated in some way, that helps, and if it isn't, that's totally fine too. But as far as you supporting the channel, there's several things you can do. The first is what you're currently doing right now. You're watching this video. So thank you. Whether it's this video, another video, any of those things, watching videos is inherently what defines the fact that I have people engaging with the content, that I have people here. If you stop watching, well, first of all, if you stop watching, I'll be fine. But in general, if everyone stops watching, then obviously that changes the nature of what this channel is and what it offers to anyone. And so watching the video, whether this, whether others, commenting, liking, subscribing, sharing, all of those things absolutely helps the channel out. You've seen everyone say it on a million YouTube videos from today until tomorrow. I specifically do not say like, comment, subscribe, share, all those things. I do not shut up my Patreon. Most of the things that are involved in the day-to-day operations of how you can help the channel, I try not to make a big deal about saying it in every single video. YouTube tells me I should do that. YouTube says it's best practice. Tell everyone, like, comment, subscribe. And I do so, but I do so whimsically when it comes up in the middle of a video. Halfway through an unboxing, I'll be like, oh, by the way, you should probably subscribe while here. I do it when it feels more natural to the moment as opposed to in every single video, because whether YouTube tells me it's the right thing or not, sometimes things just feel wrong to my own personal voice and how I like to engage. And so I don't say it every video, but I will say it now. Liking, commenting, subscribing, engaging, all of those things absolutely helps the algorithm, helps YouTube to tell others that this is a video that in some way resonated with you, and then it shows it and shares it to more people. So it does help the channel. Speaking of which, if you want to help the channel in a more of a financial sense, there are several ways you can do it. The first and the easiest is either by becoming a Patreon. If you become a Patreon, I'll link to everything down below. My Patreon is linked in the bottom of every single video. So first of all, it helps with the channel, but you will also get dedicated content on Patreon. You'll get schedules, you get behind the scenes videos, you'll also get free games given away every month. There are things that well, not guaranteed. 3 games are given away to Patreon members. Some get, some don't. But effectively, you'll be getting things for being a Patreon, but ultimately the main incentive should be helping and supporting the channel. Additionally, you can become a YouTube member. That's another option on the table. You can become a YouTube member. There's a little button below every video if you're not already a member, and you can go ahead and jump in. Again, I try to put the schedule updates over there as well. I try to link to those videos that I do on Patreon so that both YouTube members and Patreons are both getting that dedicated content. I try to do that. But that's another thing you can do. And then lastly, directly, if you're just into one-time things, you don't want to deal with any of that, you can directly go ahead and PayPal alex@boardgameco.com. Anything you get over there, ideally, if you could say it's like supporting the channel or something, because otherwise I'll get a random payment and wonder terribly for the next few days over who I'm supposed to be doing what for. So those are things that are on the table. But yeah, that's some of the ways you can support the channel that helps out. I'll link to it down below, but I recently did a different video where I talked about a bunch of Vindication promos. I am selling those as well. I will link and timestamp to the specific section in a different video where I talk about that in case you want to know more. But again, buying those promos helps with the channel as well. So there's a variety of ways you can help the channel out. Some of them paid, some of them not paid. But again, anything you do, being here is incredibly appreciated. Speaking of paid content, so I mentioned we'll talk about paid content. Let's talk about paid content. One of the biggest changes or shifts you've seen over the course of the past year is who works with the channel and what they do and the paid content in the channel. Last year, around September time, I want to say in 2022, I brought Devin and Meg on board, both close personal friends as well as people I wanted to work with, and I brought both of them on board the channel to do more content together. Devin had a bit of an arc where we did a bunch of videos together, we traveled, we synced up, we did all this stuff together, both unpaid content, and then Devin started taking on the paid content, so we were doing more collaborative content on the channel. We did our top 100 games of all time and all those things on the channel. There were a bunch of videos, a bunch of stuff, bunch of plans, and those kind of fell a little bit out of order because of the nature of the fact that, frankly, I wasn't paying my friends enough money because I didn't have enough money to pay them more than a small part-time amount. So, hey, sure, they were employees to a degree, but they ultimately need to ensure that their needs are taken care of in other ways. To that end, Devin did take a job at Lucky Duck Games. Devin is doing a fantastic job over Lucky Duck Games. He is their head marketing manager. I want to say maybe I may have gotten the title incorrectly, but he's definitely something to do with marketing. I think he's the head marketing manager over there. He's doing a fantastic job from what I can see, and I'm very, very, very happy for him, and I love him very dearly, but you also don't see him on videos that much, if at all. Occasionally you'll see him on the weekly lives that we do. Well, I do a weekly live, and sometimes Devin, Meg, and or Jenna show up on the channel for the weekly live as well. So Devin is less a part of the board game channel, and he's, I was going to say just my friend, but honestly that's the most important one. He is my friend. I am very very close with him and I appreciate him very much. But he was starting to do previews and paid content. Originally on the channel for a long time, I barely did any paid content. All the content you see, every single video that goes up every single week was done by me, for me, just that's it. It was no paid content at all in any way, past like one pledge manager run through I had done years ago. But as far as when Devin came on board, one of the things I was trying to do in order to make sure I can actually pay my friends for being on the channel while not dipping into money I didn't have, is we started to finally engage in paid content on the channel. That means paid previews, paid gameplays, all of those things, and Devin started doing that. That was slowly taking off, but again, ultimately, it wasn't where it needed to be. Devin took a job at Lucky Duck, and Meg took over on the paid content. So this is a bit of both a conversation around the evolution of the people on the channel, as well as the paid content on the channel. Currently, where we are with paid content is that right now, I would say on average, we do maybe 2 videos a week of paid content on the channel. That's from the roughly 17 videos a week that go up every single week. There are 17 videos every single week on average that go up, and 2 of those roughly on average per week are currently paid, and Meg is currently taking over and doing a vast majority of the preview content, to the point that she's been less often in other videos, although that's something that we're hoping will change at some point, because the original game plan with both Devin and Meg weren't to bring them in to do paid content. It was to bring them in to do things with my friends, and then do paid content so that I could pay my friends. And just juggling any number of different things has always made that a bit of a struggle, but we'll see how that evolves over the course of the next year. As far as those 17 videos a week, in case you have someone who doesn't know what the exact schedule is, I'll give you the rough schedule of how the week operates every single week, starting off with Sunday. Sunday's a bit of a catch-all video. It's either a topical video or a monthly video, depending on the Sunday. It might be a games leaving the collection. It might be a conversation around crowdfunding. It might be any number of things, but it's usually in that range, something a bit more conversational in nature, or a monthly video. Monday is when we put up the 2 back or not to back, generally when we have them. That's going to be an overview of crowdfunding, going over the crowdfunding campaigns of the week, talking about those, whether you should or shouldn't back them. Over on Patreon, we have an unfair and unbalanced video. It's called Unfair and Unbalanced, and it's Counter FOMO. The goal of that video is it's a 5-minute video where we go over all the games we covered in 2 back or not to back, and I specifically try to convince you not to back those videos. If you are a Patreon at the $5 tier or above, then effectively you are someone who will get access to that video, and that's true for YouTube members as well. You'll get access to that video as well, because YouTube membership is in that $5 range. On Tuesday, I will generally do 3 videos, almost always either previews or reviews or gameplays. That's usually what goes up Tuesday. Wednesday is going to be a live video every single week, and then again, 2 other videos, usually previews, reviews, gameplays, or unboxings will usually go up on Wednesday. Thursday is again either a conversational or a monthly video or a list video. I usually try to do my top 10 lists over on Thursday, or 7 games to check out if you like this game kind of video. Those kind of round up the list videos and or games leaving the collection, things like that will go up on Thursday. Friday will either be monthly or something like that, or Sundays will be if I'm behind in reviews and I'm trying to cram too many reviews into not enough time, then Friday will also have another 3 or so review videos. And then lastly, Saturday we'll have the weekend review on Saturday, and then you'll have 2 more videos going up, generally going to be reviews, previews, gameplays, those kinds of things. Oh, and then lastly, Tuesday nights is also live content. Speaking of which, Tuesday night, the live content, we have a live gameplay, usually a live solo and or cooperative gameplay on Tuesday nights, and that's part of the shift away from Camp Co-op. Camp Co-op is the channel that I ran with Professor Meg for a long time. It's one of the ways we first started doing things together, and over time it's just shifted, and we focus less on Camp Co-op and more on just BoardGameCo in general, which means some of the live content is shifting over to just doing it Tuesday nights on this channel, whether it's myself solo or with her going through whatever kind of gameplay, campaign game, any of that things that we're going through. And that's going to be another shift in the way things have changed over the past year. Camp Co-op still exists, and we've very heavily built a community around that. We don't have Camp Co-op anymore. We still have the Camp Co-op community, but effectively we have a Discord channel. I'll try to link to it down below. But a Discord channel you can go ahead and join if you're interested in a very friendly group of people who are here to care more about your day and how it's going than about whatever board games are going on. But they also will want to talk to you about Vindication, Terraforming Mars, or I'm just listing my favorite games. But Vindication is well loved in that channel. So I'll link to the Discord down below. Then we have the monthly videos. Monthly videos, again, if you want just a general idea of what to expect every month, there's only a handful of videos that go up every single month. There's more of a weekly pattern than a monthly pattern, but every month we'll have a month in review. We'll have a games leaving the collection video, we'll have an upcoming crowdfunding games for the month, and then we'll have a deluxeification video. Those are usually the 4 main videos that go up on a monthly basis whenever I fit them in. And then there's other videos that'll pop up on a yearly basis. You'll have top 10 lists over the course of the year. You'll have a top 100 games of all time towards the end of the year. And then of course there's the weekly pattern. As far as ratings, This is a fun one. Before this video, I went ahead and I went over all the games I've rated over the past, well, forever, as well as all the games I've rated over the past year. I have all those ratings cataloged. I use Notion as my place where I catalog them. And to be very clear, these are all ratings of games that I've rated on the channel. These are not ratings of games that I've rated personally. These are games that have shown up in videos on the channel and that I've given a rating to. And I want to give you a bit of a ratings breakdown. It's very easy to see me on the big crowdfunding campaign pages and then think that, hey, you know, the ratings are normally this or that where they are most promoted. But across the board, just going through this, and over here I'll be reading from a bit of a chart over here I have in front of me. But effectively, right now, currently my ratings are, my rating scale is 1 all the way up to a 5. And the baseline over there is we have 2.5. So a 2.5 rating. That's a pretty bad rating. It does happen, but it's rare. A 2.5, represents 4% of my ratings across all time. A 3s represent 20% of my ratings. So giving a game a 3 out of 5, that's 20% of my ratings are a 3 out of 5. 41% of my ratings are a 3.5 out of 5. 24% of my ratings are a 4 out of 5. 9% of my ratings are a 4.5. And 2% of my ratings are a 5 out of 5. I'll try to copy that down below if I can remember to do so. But effectively, that should give you a good idea of the distribution of what you can expect on the channel. That doesn't change much if I look at the past year. It's roughly the same brackets. Over the past year, 3% instead of 4% is 2.5. We have 17% instead of 20% is going to be a 3. 42% instead of 41% is a 3.5. 27% instead of 24% is a 4. 7% is a 4.5. And 4% is a 5. So I guess double amount of 5s ratioed over this past year. That's going to be a breakdown of the rating. So in general, on an average video, 2 out of every, what is it, what numbers is 40%, so that means 2 out of every 5 videos are going to be a 3.5 out of 5. Nearly half my ratings are a 3.5 out of 5. I've said this before, I will say it again. A 3.5 is my most common rating. Most games are good. Most games have me interested in playing them again, and most games I ultimately won't because I'm picking better games off that. One of the videos I did this year is a 3.5 is not a recommendation because it is both my most common rating and it's not an active recommendation. It's not a game I'm recommending against. It is a good game that might resonate more with you than it did with me. I am validating it as something that I think is a good time overall, but it's still not something I act like. Like if you're looking for a game that you'll enjoy, I recommend it. But do I recommend that over other things? Generally not. 3.5 is a stamp of, hey, you did a good job, but you're not the thing that sparks joy compared with 4, 4.5, and 5. That's going to be some of the ratings, so a ratings breakdown, in case you're looking for how harsh am I as a critic, how much do I like games, that should give you a good indicator of what you can expect to see. You may notice that I didn't reference anything below a 2. The lowest thing I talked about over there was 2.5s because 2s, 1.5s, and 1s are incredibly infrequent. They do happen, but the problem is I have so many games I review that anything that, you know, if I did it one time, it's less than 1%, and so that won't even show up on this breakdown over here. But I do rate games lower than a 2, or 2 or lower. It certainly does happen, but it absolutely is rare for me. More often than not, those are games I don't want to give my time to, which is a good time to move into my biases and conflicts of interest. So, in case you want to know more about my biases and conflicts of interest, if you're here, you're watching this channel, you've made it this far into the video, which, first of all, congratulations. Thank you for being here for this long on a video that's barely about board games and more about just how I run the channel. But as far as my biases, my conflicts of interest, oh, you jumped here for the timestamp, because this would be a good timestamp to jump to. That's possible as well. So a few things. First of all, I work for GameFound. I am CMO of GameFound. I work for GameFound. I try to take that into account as much as possible. I do not personally believe that it affects my content, but I recognize the fact that you may or may not agree with that. One of my favorite comments I will get on the channel are people who left when I took the job at GameFound, and they've come back because they'll say, hey, I thought there'd be a change, and you seem the same as you always were. And I love reading that because I try to be, and this bias is a real concept. There's always biases at play. It's my job to try to be mindful of and overcome that bias, and I do the best job I can doing that. That doesn't mean I'm perfect at it. That doesn't mean I won't have missteps, but I try to do what I can as far as my biases. But that said, I work for GameFound, a platform that launches games. That means that every time I'm reviewing a game that's on Kickstarter or on GameFound, there can be that mental mindset of, I want GameFound to do well, and it's not that I want Kickstarter to not do well, but I'm less incentivized to see that, and so those things can infiltrate the content. I don't believe they infiltrate the content at a level that would make my content not relevant or accurate, but I can't say that with perfect accuracy. So please know and understand that I do work for GameFound. I worked for GameFound in the past, I took a job for GameFound in August of 2022, so my channel has been the channel for the longest time before that, and if you look at my content before and after, I don't believe you'll see a reasonable change. But ultimately, that's for you to judge and for you to decide whether that disqualifies me as a source for you, and I completely respect it. I'll also say, and this is where we start moving to things that are more of an issue, but that will affect the types of content you see, is I'm friends with publishers. I am friends with a lot of publishers in the space. I love the space I work in. I love the board game space, and that means that I go to conventions and I see people who I'm friends with, and I do not put up a wall between myself and others and say, hey, I'm doing board game media, you are a board game publisher, I can't be friendly with you. I respect the idea that pure journalistic integrity would require me to do that. I respect that. Ultimately, I took a pay cut to be here. I left a high-paying job to take this job, to be in the board game space, to do content, because I love what I do. And so even though I respect and acknowledge anyone who sits there and puts up that wall between themselves and publishers, who refuses to be friendly with those people who they are critiquing their products, I respect it. It's not a choice that I make. I try to be mindful of my biases, and I can point to many, many videos where I have negatively rated games that I did not like, even if I did like the publisher. So even if I was friends with the publisher. So I can point to instances where my bias is not stopping me from being negative, but I can't prove either to myself or to you that maybe I would have been a drop more negative. Maybe I wouldn't have held back on that one extra complaint. There's things that can filter into the nuance of that, and I think that my role at Game Fan, I don't think affects me that much personally. You have to decide yourself, but for me, I don't think so. Versus being friends with people, it is very hard to sit there and negatively review a game that you know you like the person behind it, the person who works at the company. It is hard to do so. I still try to do so, and I still believe I do, but it's certainly an area where it's harder for me. Money from paid work. This is another issue. Now that I've started doing paid work, now that in 2023 we started doing paid content on the BoardGameCo channel, that means that every time I rate a game, I do have to be mindful that that person may have cut me a check at a different point in time. And they may be less likely to want to do so again when they see that I trashed a game of theirs, or that I was even critical of a game of theirs. That is another area that, again, I don't actually have this on my mind right now. This one's more on the Game Found side of things, where I recognize it as a bias. I don't think I'm mindful of it when I'm doing my content, but I can't speak to the subconscious aspect. But so it's worth knowing, it's worth being aware that as I dive more into paid content, which is never going to be the dominant aspect of the channel, it's always going to be a sub aspect of the channel. That's just what I need to do to feel necessary. But past that, it is certainly a factor to be mindful of. I'll say that there are publisher trips. IV Games, Steamforge Games, Chip Theory Games, Orange Nebula. There are a bunch of companies that have brought myself in for various press events around their games. And I like those companies, I like the people there, and it's certainly something to be mindful of if I'm covering a game from one of those press events. Again, I think I try to be as transparent and blatant as possible, but ultimately those are biases. You should be aware of them. I will list those in every single video. This video is not the only time you'll hear about it. In fact, I should have said it early in the video, but anytime there's paid content on the channel, I talk about it. I say so in the video. I hit the box. I say so to you. I do not leave it for you to decide to figure out what's there. If a video does not say it's paid content, it is not paid content. And if it says it's paid content, it is paid content. There is no middle ground here. So please understand, I try to be as transparent as possible in every aspect of things. And then the last thing that will definitely 100% affect what ratio my content is positive towards negative is that I don't like playing games I don't like. I don't. If I play a 3.5, I will play it again, and I'll play it again so I can review it for you, because I want to play games multiple times before reviewing them. And it's easy enough to dive into a game that I enjoyed. It's even easier to dive into a game that I was kind of a little bit less a fan of. But diving into a game that was an utter waste of my time, especially if it's a longer game, a 2-hour game that I didn't enjoy my first play, I am not in a rush to cover it. I'm not in a rush to tell you to play it again and again so I can review it with confidence, knowing that I didn't enjoy it. But hey, congratulations, I spent an extra 5 hours playing a game that I actively did not like. This will likely not heavily affect the fact that you'll still see medium and good and games that I have critiques against. You'll see all of that. But one of the reasons you'll see much less in ratings that are 2s, 1.5s, or 1s, one of the biggest reasons you will not see that is, in addition to the fact that games in general are good, when I do find those that are bad, I don't want to play them a second time when they're that bad, just so I can tell you that I didn't like it. It might come up in other content, I might mention it, I might talk about it, but I usually will not give a review, and therefore it won't make its way into my review board or a dedicated video. There are exceptions. There are times where I will play a game that was that low because it was easy enough to do so, or I really want to try again, or something. There are times I do it, but I don't rate games that I only played one time, and I don't like playing games that I didn't like, and that puts us at an interesting position. So just be aware of that. My average rating is a 3.5 for a reason, and that's because of the fact that I try to play only good games. As far as other things you should know, just a handful of things here. First of all, if you made it this far in the video, then you already know, but I talk fast. It's something I'm always mindful of. I try to be as clear as possible. I care more about enunciating, and I don't always get that right, but I care more about enunciating than I do about talking slower, but that's just because there are many people who like that I talk fast, and many people who have a hard time with it, and I don't really know which way to go, so I end up defaulting to the way I normally talk. I'll also say that in general, it's worth knowing about crowdfunding. When I am reviewing a prototype, a non-finished game, you almost always will not see coverage on a non-finished game if it's lower than a 3. There are exceptions. There are times where I did for some reason or another, but more often than not, if it's lower than a 3 out of 5, I usually reach out to the creator and say, hey, I don't mind being critical about a non-actual final product, but there's a difference between being critical versus saying this was a terrible experience, I really didn't like it. And so usually if I didn't love a prototype, I will reach out to the creator and say, not if I didn't love it. If it was low, if it would be rated at a 3 or lower, I will usually reach out to the creator and say, hey, this wasn't for me. Do you want me to play it again and find out whether that changes and or tell my audience, or would you rather I just not continue to spend time in it? I'll give them that choice. Sometimes creators will choose to have me continue to play it. Other times they'll sit there and say thank you for trying it, and maybe we'll try again when it's a finished game. I give that leeway to prototypes specifically because they are ultimately a work in progress. I review them, I rate them, I give my opinion because you are being asked to spend money on these things. But I also give some degree of grace to the idea that it's not a final product, and I should be mindful of that. Lastly, let's talk about things I'd like to do this year. As far as things I'd like to do this year, this coming year, 2024, what's on the horizon? There are some things, I think some are more likely to happen than others. I'd like to work on a new set for the channel. This is in progress. You'll see it at some point. I don't know when, but I started getting the equipment. I'm going to set things up. It's just everything's a backlog, but I would like to work on a new set for the channel. So at some point, you'll hopefully see a new set. I very much miss the couch I used to have 3 years ago. I'd love to get that back in the mix. I don't know if or when. I need to figure out spaces and situations, but I would like to have a new set for the channel, not replacing this. I'd like to have this and another set, possibly swivel camera. I will figure things out. We will figure things out, but I very much plan on having that happen throughout the year. I recently just added a third camera angle as well. Again, my computer's kind of able to handle that. You're seeing that infiltrate into a video here or there. More often than not, gameplay, sometimes reviews. So it won't always be everything like this video. There's no reason for a third camera angle. It is what it is. But other videos, there will be. So I have that being added. I'd like to be able to add channel recommendations, scores and recommendations. I'd like to be able to add those more visibly in my review content. So if you're going through a review, I'd like to be able to get to a part where I say this game is a 3.5 out of 5, because that is my most common rating after all, and then have that pop up on screen. And similar to many other reviewers will have that, I'd like it to be on screen. It's something I am working on in general. I'd like to be able to have that there, but I'd also like to have channel recommendations in general. BoardGameCo recommends, something along those lines. Whatever types of ratings there are. I'm instinctively thinking of doing one for 4s and above, and then for a 5, but I haven't decided. Maybe a 4.5. I don't know. We'll see. I have to figure out exactly how I want to break it down. But I'd like to have 2 ratings. One for an actual recommendation. I recommend this game. And then another for I love this game and really think it's absolutely amazing. I'd like to have 2 ratings on the channel. I'd like to be able to put some sort of design in place. It's something I want to do in 2024. And the last thing I'd like to do in 2024 that I don't know if it'll happen or not. This one feels a bit more ambitious. And I even forgot what it was. Darn it. I didn't take notes on this one. There was another thing I want to do in 2024. Oh, merch. That's what it was. Merch. This one I don't know if it'll happen or not, but whether it's, shirts or cups or mugs, whatever it is, it's something that I should do at this point. Given my channel size, I should occasionally offer that. I need to figure out the logistics of it, doing it in a way that is manageable, sustainable, but not overwhelming. And so that's something I would love to do in 2024. I don't care if 3 people buy a mug and 2 people buy a t-shirt. Well, I do care. The problem is, that's part of the problem. I need to figure out a way that I can do it that doesn't need a lot of people to jump in and participate. So I'd love to engage in some degree of actual having BoardGameCo content in the board game space because people have asked for it enough times that instinctively I'm not a big merch person. I don't really buy merch from other channels, or at least very, very infrequently. So instinctively, it's not my jam, but enough people have asked for it over the years that I really think I should get around to it, and I hope to do it in 2024, but we'll see. If I'm going to do it, I want to do it right. I don't want to just set up a little shop where you get some cheap mug that no one cares about. I mean, that might be what I have to do. We'll figure it out. I want to look into that in 2024. And that's where we are. That's a bit of a state of the channel update. A lot of other things have changed across the past year. There have been a lot of iterations, small, large, whatever. Ultimately, I'm always trying to do the same thing I always have been. To continue to talk about the hobby that I love, to share parts of the hobby that I love, and to be able to be in this space. And I'm grateful to all of you for allowing me to be in that position. And so thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance. Whether you started watching me again this week, or whether you started watching me 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whenever you started being along for this ride, it has absolutely made a huge impact to my life. A huge impact. I left my last job. I'm at a new job. My life is drastically different than it ever was. I'm grateful for all of you for allowing that to happen. So thank you. I'm Alex Radcliffe from BoardGameCo. And as always, I hope you have a good one.